So for today's video, I think I want to review a personal favorite movie of mine. Some of my new personal favorite movies have really gone hard. One movie that really gave me that love I have for film more than anything else is the 2021 masterpiece, a part of the DCEU. James Gunn's The Suicide Squad was a movie that I've already talked about before in small videos, but I think now I really want to discuss why I love this movie in such great lengths. It's a movie that not only lived up to the hype, but is everything I love seeing in modern films, with such a huge level of effort put into it. Some might say this movie is overrated, but I disagree, as I want to go ahead and talk about one of my favorite movies of the 2020s. Oh man, I can't wait to watch this for like the 10th time now. Wait a minute. I don't think this is it. Wait. Oh no. Oh no. No. Not this shit. Anything but this shit. What the fuck is going on? Hold on just 1 second.
Ahoy hoy!
Hey, Austin, buddy, baby. I just wanted to point out that I think a mistake was made for my next video. I think you gave me the wrong movie to review.
What? You said you wanted to review Suicide Squad.
No, I said James Gunn's The Suicide Squad from 2021, not David Ayer's Suicide Squad from 2016.
Oh, come on. Didn't you need to review something for April Fool's Day?
I mean, yeah, I'm working on that, but it doesn't mean I have to review... This is for reviewing and crapping on Solo, a Star Wars story, isn't it?
Good luck, sucker!
Fuck! So, if it wasn't clear by now, I am reviewing the first movie to feature The Suicide Squad from 2016. Not the one from 2021, and frankly the one that doesn't get quite as much love, as Suicide Squad 2016 has been kind of infamous as one of the worst comic book movies of all time. Even in the mix of comic book movies that are truly game changers within the past decades, there's always at least one that's incredibly infamous for being everything that's wrong with comic book movies. And Suicide Squad was definitely that movie for the 2010s. A movie that was part of the reason why DC has gotten the reputation it has received in the late 2010s. It's a movie that I have quite a history with, as when this movie was first coming out, I was genuinely excited for it. Oh yes, you heard me. This was honestly one of my most anticipated movies I have ever witnessed in my entire life at the time. The hype for this movie was real for me, and I know what some of you are probably thinking. Oh my god, how could it? I thought it was going to suck no matter what. What did you expect? Well, for one thing, James Gunn proved you can make a good movie out of this property, so screw you. And second, even if there were doubts going in, there was more of this to be excited for, and I was hoping this was going to be a best case scenario movie, if the cards were played right. I think to really give you an idea of why I was excited for this movie, I really need to discuss the whole crazy situation that is the DC Cinematic Universe, or DC Extended Universe, as some would like to call it. To do that, we gotta go back a bit further. Let's go back to the year 2012. Ah yes, 2012. A time there was no TikTok, only Vine. Presidential elections were actually somewhat normal and didn't involve a washed up piece of shit for once. And it was also the year that some assumed that the world was going to end based on a Mayan calendar and a Roland Emmerich movie. Man, times sure were different back then. One of the things that was definitely different was the state of movies, as streaming wasn't quite as big as it is now. and the landscape had a lot more variety of movies that were set as tentpole blockbusters. Yet there were two movies in particular that ended up being the most talked about that year. And looking back, they were both significant films of that era. Those movies being Marvel's The Avengers and DC's The Dark Knight Rises. Not only were both movies big comic book superhero movies from both respected rivals of the biggest brands in superhero history, but both movies represented a bit of a start of a cultural shift for the movie industry. The Avengers represented the start of a new era, as the film was a massive cultural phenomenon, basically doing the impossible. Rather than being a simple series of movies based on one character, Marvel decided to have all of these solo movies only to lead up to each character teaming up in one big crossover event film, being the first to successfully create a cinematic universe. It was crazy to think at the time because most people thought a movie like this couldn't exist, and even if it did, it would have flopped hard. Certainly wasn't the case, as after the success of Marvel, not only did they get more popular, but everyone was trying to make their films more than just a simple series, as this was the beginning of movies going on the cinematic universe trend. Meanwhile, you had The Dark Knight Rises, which, while it wasn't as big of a success as what Marvel put out, and many would have even argued it was kind of a disappointment, however, nowadays, some people, myself included, look back a little fondly over Nolan's conclusion to his famous Dark Knight trilogy, mainly due to the fact that over the years, this movie was kind of the last of its kind, where more films try to go in the Marvel route of being a big property that continues to go on and on for the end of time. Nolan gave us a set trilogy with a beginning, middle, and end, and I honestly miss those days, where we just deal with a simple trilogy of movies and not have to be concerned of playing catch up or being disappointed by a later installment. Sure, it was still Batman, but Nolan made it so it was just these versions of the characters and nothing more. No future legacy sequel or even a cameo in an alternate dimension crossover event film. It's just a simple 3 films that tell one story about Batman. Besides, Christian Bale didn't need to return to the cape in The Flash. Isn't that right, Michael Keaton?
Yeah.
Though, for better or for worse, we even knew at the time of The Dark Knight Rises that after this, DC wasn't going to go the route of making simple solo movies again. Oh no. With how successful the rival company was with creating the cinematic universe, there was only one logical explanation to go. And it's the one that at least makes the most sense, right? I mean, let's face it. If there was any studio or characters that was actually understandable to make a cinematic universe out of, it's Marvel's biggest competitor. Not a cinematic universe that only focuses on one single character that would have probably been better off as an Avenger, or whatever the hell Dark Universe was supposed to be. DC having their own movie series where all of their own iconic superheroes would team up for big event movies was the one that made sense. What other better thing to combat against the Avengers than the Justice League? So shouldn't people be excited for this prospect? Well, I think because Marvel had already done it first, there was a lot of expectation for DCs to do something like that. And because they've been prone to making a lot of mistakes, many were doubtful that a universe could come out from them. Especially when it seemed clear they were trying to play catch up to Marvel doing this universe, while DC was busy with Nolan's Batman trilogy and Jonah Hex. Yet, it's not like DC didn't make any attempts, as they did try to kick off a cinematic universe a year prior to Marvel's Avengers with Green Lantern.
Wow. I know, right?
And that failed miserably. So, there was doubt that DC shouldn't even try with how massive Marvel did with this series. But for me, I was more so wanting to encourage DC. Even at the time of Marvel's reign with the Avengers, I still consider myself more of a DC fan than a Marvel one. Sure, you can argue about every single bad DC movie and decision they made. But for one, Marvel is no better sometimes. And two, when a DC project is great, it is truly a game-changingly great project. Even with every single Marvel movie I have loved from their cinematic universe, there has not been a single one of them that was as good as The Dark Knight, in my opinion. And in regards to their animation department, man, where do I even begin? Batman, Superman, and the Justice League animated series alone were proof that these characters could get a great amount of storytelling in a big superhero universe. So who said a Justice League movie in a DC cinematic universe couldn't be good? If done right, I would love to see a film that's as epic as The Dark Knight with the same level of care something like the Justice League animated series had in terms of character faithfulness. A little competition wouldn't hurt Marvel, and I think it was better to encourage the prospects that DC can make something special. Well, they certainly were trying, as within the next year, after ending The Dark Knight Rises, while Marvel had their success, they were attempting a cinematic universe once again. This time starting with the Man of Steel himself, Superman. Oh wait, the movie just called Man of Steel? It makes sense after The Dark Knight. But yeah, Superman was starting out this universe. And it made sense to why. I mean, him and Batman are the face of DC, and easily the most recognizable heroes to lead this universe. It seemed like they were going to pay off, as Man of Steel got a legit amount of hype attached to it. It was a different take on the character, while also being the beginning of seeing the Justice League start out in what was hoping to be an exciting new era for DC superheroes. The film came out, and well, it wasn't quite the success many have hoped. Now, this isn't to say the movie wasn't a success or didn't have its fans. In fact, if anything, the reception to Man of Steel was one of the most mixed I had seen at the time for any blockbuster.
Man of Steel sucks!
Man of Steel is freaking awesome and you know it!
Some said it was a refreshing new take on the character that was a decent setup to DC's big universe of films. Others said that Zack Snyder made a movie that didn't represent the Superman we all know and love. At all. And it was setting an early warning sign that this universe wasn't meant to be. As for me, well, I don't think Man of Steel is a bad movie. Enough to a point where I do see a lot of what people like about this film. This was a new take on Superman that we weren't quite used to. And I find it ironic how many people hated the fact that Man of Steel takes a different approach to Superman due to the reception of the last Superman movie, Superman Returns. You know, the one with Todd Ingram as Superman that was criticized too much by trying to recreate the Richard Donner films. Now, this movie does the exact opposite of that, and people hate it? I think it was due to the fact that this extreme, darker tone doesn't always work for Superman as much as someone like Batman. And even without that in mind, Snyder was never the strongest with his script writing.
I will find him. I will find him.
With a lot of themes being not subtle and some otherwise trying to be cool or serious moments turning out to be, well, kinda unintentionally
I will find him!
not that. Yet I admire a lot of the stuff the film did do differently that did make this a unique Superman movie. It had a lot more exciting action that we never quite seen in the Superman movie of this caliber. The score by Hans Zimmer is a unique take on a new theme for the Man of Steel, and for what it's worth, Henry Cavill is a decent Superman. I think the script could have gone more in depth with his character emotionally, but the ingredients for a good Superman movie for a new DC universe were still there. Despite Man of Steel not being a masterpiece, I still found it to be a decent movie, and so did others. Enough to where it's only the first movie of the cinematic universe. I can imagine the studios, Zack Snyder, and the other creative forces would take what made people like about Man of Steel, listen to some of the critiques, and create a film that actually does end up improving it 100%. It has happened before. It can happen again. They were thinking of a way to make this DC universe way more hype. So within the next few years, they were coming out with their next film with Superman, along with Batman?
Batman!
Yeah, rather than a simple Man of Steel sequel to tie into a larger cinematic universe, this straight up was giving us a crossover movie with the Caped Crusader.
Who would have thought that would be successful? Two of the most well-loved superheroes in one film? What a bad idea.
Now initially, there's some excitement to be had, because it's Batman, and a live-action film featuring the two most iconic superheroes of DC was something to behold. Yet, was this the correct way to go with this movie? As someone who liked Man of Steel, that movie didn't do Superman 100% right. So, some fans wanted a second tent to be more Superman focused instead of just shoehorning it into a cinematic universe. Things also seemed more suspicious with the casting of Ben Affleck as Batman, Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor, and wait, Wonder Woman's in this too? I thought this was going to be more of a Batman movie. Many were questioning if Snyder and his team could pull this off, but the excitement was still there. We're still getting a potential DC cinematic universe, and many were saying DC was overdue for this stuff. So there was an interest to see the first live-action version of the Justice League on film. Granted, Ben Affleck wasn't my first choice to play Batman either, and Wonder Woman should have probably gotten her own movie first. She's iconic enough to be solo. Yet the passion for these characters were still there. And even more interest came out with another announcement from the DCEU. Here enter in what Marvel was doing around the time in between Batman vs. Superman and Man of Steel. They were getting real big and real popular with their movies, and possibly their biggest success from the help of the man behind Super and writer of Scooby-Doo, James Gunn. Guardians of the Galaxy was a huge hit for Marvel, and also kind of a game changer too. Rather than being focused on a well-known pre-existing superhero, it's focusing more on a obscure ragtag team of misfits that aren't your typical heroic flair. It had a lot of style to it, with a licensed soundtrack and very quippy, flawed characters that DC took notice and figured, what could they do that's similar to this? How about this? A team of supervillains teaming up in a Guardians of the Galaxy style movie. Suicide Squad was a series compositive of different supervillains handled by Amanda Waller, also known as Task Force X. This was a team consistent of villains doing a job for the government to get some time off their sentence. Downside is, if they disobeyed Waller in any sort of fashion, they are executed, hence the name Suicide Squad. The team would consist of a variety of different villains from other DC properties. Some of these include Killer Shark, Deadshot, Captain Boomerang, and most notably, Harley Quinn, just to name a few. Given the name and the larger stakes within these teams, it was interchangeable to who would be included, making this concept have a lot of potential. The kind of potential that got me excited for this movie. As someone who loves superheroes, but also adores supervillains arguably more, a movie about Suicide Squad is the exact kind of movie that I wanted from DC. A movie that takes what made Marvel successful and flipping it on its edge with characters I was more familiar with and highlighting an iconic rogues gallery that DC was often more known for than the likes of Marvel, adding in the focus on Harley Quinn, who is rising in popularity and also a fan favorite among many hardcore DC fans. I may or may not happen to be one of them. And a promise of a darker version of a Marvel-style movie, which is something I clamored for big time. Also added was Fury director David Ayer, and a huge cast portraying this team, with actors like Will Smith as Deadshot, Jared Leto as the Joker, and the awesome blonde from The Wolf of Wall Street, newcomer Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. This sounds like a match made in heaven. What could possibly go wrong? Well, there's a bigger picture of the DC cinematic universe, as now we gotta get back to the fact that Suicide Squad came out the same year as Batman vs. Superman. The latter came out first, and had a lot to live up to, and it was... Oh no. Now, I will confess to something. I don't hate Batman vs. Superman as much as most people do. I can appreciate the attempt at making a DC cinematic universe in a different way. And also, there are redeeming elements to Batman vs. Superman. It's just... really in the mix of a movie with a whole plethora of problems that could very well be explained in a separate video entirely. It was a film that suffered too much of trying to kickstart a cinematic universe to play catch-up to Marvel. Not to say there weren't things to like. Ben Affleck was a decent Batman, and Wonder Woman was cool, But this was not the improvement most wanted from Man of Steel, which is not a good look if you're expecting to be one of the most successful competitors to the juggernaut that is Marvel. Sure, Batman vs. Superman made money, but it wasn't a billion-dollar hit like it was supposed to be, which led to a lot of people to be even more skeptical of DC's next project, which, even in spite of Batman vs. Superman's disappointment, I was still hyped. Sure, there were things to be skeptical of still, but honestly, the marketing for Suicide Squad definitely made it feel like it was going to be a blast of a movie. I love that Bohemian Rhapsody trailer, and seeing just a glimpse of the kind of characters and storytelling that could separate themselves from Marvel was enough to get me excited. Yet the skepticism reigned even further when the film was announced to be having reshoots shortly after Batman vs. Superman. It sounded like there was going to be some tampering to make sure the next film is a bigger success than what should have been a hit. Yet the hype was still there for me. Movies go through reshoots all the time. And besides, this was a completely different team than Zack Snyder. We get to see Harley Quinn in a full-fledged movie, and a lot of these stars have been awesome in other projects. There can't be any possible way that this film could end up being somehow worse than the last one. I mean, that's just the Rotten Tomatoes critics score. It doesn't mean that the film is automatically bad. How many masterpieces and classic movies have gotten negative review scores on Rotten Tomatoes? It could still be a good movie. Oh.
It's still good, it's still good.
It's gone.
I know.
It didn't turn out to be a masterpiece like I expected. In fact, maybe not very good at all. But did I want to admit that? Not really. I mean, this was a movie I had hoped to have been good. And even within the film at the time, there were things I kind of liked about it. I wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt, especially when I wanted this movie to be the film to prove the naysayers that DC can make good movies. They can have a cinematic universe that rivals Marvel, and it would be glorious. We can have two cinematic universes with the most iconic heroes. But alas, it wasn't the case, as this film was my Phantom Menace. Now, Star Wars The Phantom Menace doesn't need an introduction in terms of big disappointing movies. People were let down by it so bad that they were kind of in denial that a movie that was destined to be the best thing ever turned out to be the exact opposite. This phenomenon was so prevalent that a phrase was made by Chris Stuckman known as Phantom Menacing.
You can be so excited for this movie. You feel like your entire life's happiness is riding on the success of this movie. You get so pumped out of your mind that you might actually cry when you get the chance to see it. Then you see it, and you leave the theater and you become in denial about how bad it actually was, and you stay in denial for many years until you eventually reveal to yourself, you know what? That wasn't that good.
And yeah, I was doing the same thing with Suicide Squad, and eventually Justice League, where I was so eager to see them become a reality that I would have hated to admit that my dream movie became a failure. However, it is a tough lesson, and I eventually come to realize that Suicide Squad was not a very good movie. Like, at all.
It's my crotch.
I didn't want it to be the case, but alas, it happens to everyone, and sometimes not even just once if we're really thinking about it. However, before I actually get started with the review itself, I also wanted to briefly mention the extreme end of disappointments, where people take it too far. You see, there are some people who will see a movie and be massively disappointed by it. So much so that it clouds any other potential positive qualities of the film, to the point where people will act like it was a crime that the movie was even made in the first place. Sure, it's valid to be disappointed in the movie for whatever reason, but sometimes a movie might not be all that bad, even if it turns out to not live up to your expectations. So, I want to reiterate again, just because a movie ended up being disappointing doesn't automatically mean the movie itself was the worst thing ever. This is not one of those kinds of movies, however, because this movie fucking sucks. Oh my god! Alright, now that the little background's out of the way of Suicide Squad, it's time to talk about the actual movie itself. That's right, 1935's Suicide Squad. This lesser-known film from the 1930s about firefighters. Yeah! Wait, you still want me to review the actual shit Suicide Squad movie? And not do an April Fool's joke of that? Hello?
Pineda, you better be reviewing the 2016 Suicide Squad movie and not that firefighter movie I gave you as a joke.
Come on, do I have to?
Come on, give the people what they want. You know it'll be worth it.
Fine. Let's get started. The film begins with two short sequences introducing our two main characters. Deadshot, played by Will Smith, and Harley Quinn, played by Margot Robbie. Not a bad idea to establish these characters, yet the film doesn't do a good job setting them up. You jump right into a random sequence with no real build-up, and then suddenly you get introduced to Amanda Waller, played by Viola Davis. In the DC comics, she's kind of a big bad as a government official who is very hard and stern, doing a few inhumane and cruel things herself. Viola Davis is a good actress to play this character, except this film didn't really showcase much of her talent, as she just comes across as a character to serve exposition, to introduce all these other characters. This is the first real problem of this movie, as there's no real story structure. It doesn't have a clear and interesting setup to these characters. It just jumbles a bunch of different scenes together to let you know who these guys are, but it's not that well fleshed out. Usually I wouldn't have a problem with movies trying to go outside the normal story structure. We have filmmakers like David Lynch for that reason. But the problem is, when a good director does it, there's usually a purpose to it. Here, when it's a studio-driven Hollywood blockbuster that does it, in cases like this, it feels like them trying to jumble up a bunch of projects together to make a profit. The film apparently went through different editing studios to create the final cut, especially with added reshoots. It feels very apparent that this movie was rushed out and not fleshed out as well as something like Guardians of the Galaxy. It's especially bogged down by some of the worst editing I've seen in the motion picture. It feels so disjointed at points, and I almost feel bad because I wanted this to have a more stylized approach, which it does attempt to do that somewhat. The characters are introduced through text, there's a lot of fast-paced editing and stylized effects, but it's all flash, no substance. Where something like Scott Pilgrim works so well because it ends up creating a world within its stylized effects. Here, the effects are just that, effects. Not very good ones either. And also unlike Scott Pilgrim, this film is plagued with just easy continuity errors when it comes to going from shot to shot. I'm sure if David Ayer was able to make a more grounded film, like he initially was going to, maybe this could have worked better. There was talks of a director's cut of this, but it never really came out. And I'll go more into that later on why it will never happen. But in retrospect, this is the kind of movie that if done by Edgar Wright, it would have been the kind of film that would have been a neat stylistic blockbuster. Or even James Gunn. Who knows, maybe he'll direct a sequel. Amanda Waller wants to get Task Force X together to accomplish a mission of stopping this being called the Enchantress. We get more information on her later, but for now, we go back to our two leading characters, the first of which is Deadshot.
Deadshot.
Now, this might be bad of me to say this in 2026, and I am going to provide a lot of context for this, but I kinda like Will Smith. Okay, when I mean I like Will Smith, I don't necessarily mean the real life person who has kind of a massive ego and done some, well,
Keep my wife's name out your
questionable things. Don't worry, he's not the worst person we're going to talk about here, actually. When I say I like Will Smith, I mean more so the actor when it comes to his performances, because, let's be real, there was a reason why Will Smith became a popular star. He had some charisma to him that many actors lack. Hell, honestly, I still think The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is a great show, and he helped make that show such an iconic sitcom, and definitely one of the best the 90s had to offer. Even if, I'll be frank, it can be hard for me to take that show seriously thanks to the existence of fish pins.
See, it's like I could have a leg in one hand and a brain in the other.
As for his movies, well, he can be very likable in his films, and there are plenty of movies where he does have a likable persona. He's even been in a few movies that I would dare say are pretty good. But let's also be real here. Will Smith is in a lot of shit.
You might think you know, but you have no idea.
Like, really bad movies. There are plenty of movies that are just infamously bad that stars good old Big Willie. And for as likable as he is, there's no denying that he is in a lot of bad movies. Some definitely worse than others. And this one definitely takes the cake as one of Will Smith's worst movies. Although if I were to give the actor some credit, as far as his performance in this movie is concerned, it's not that bad. It's nothing too special, but Will Smith isn't quite as jokey as he is in other movies. And there are moments where he has a decent enough rapport with other characters in the film. Some of that charisma is seen here, and I don't mind him playing a DC villain. Even then, he's not really that evil of a guy given the whole backstory with his daughter. But even then, that is kind of underplayed. I don't think we get a good sense of his relationship with his daughter. Sure, we get a Ben Affleck Batman cameo, but nothing super substantial from a character's perspective outside of Easter eggs. It also doesn't help that they gave Will Smith some really bad dialogue too.
What, we some kind of Suicide Squad?
He said it! He said it!
So, I want to like this performance more than I do, but it doesn't save the movie. He's not lost in the second movie, as Knuckles the Echidna swearing off at his daughter was the better replacement for Will Smith.
Fuck you!
The Will Smith wasn't the real draw for me. Instead, the real draw was the first live-action appearance of my favorite DC character. Harley Quinn, the once cult favorite from Batman the Animated Series, is now maybe the most popular female anti-hero character, as Harley Quinn was a fan favorite among hardcore Batman fans for being a funny, chaotic little sidekick to one of the most iconic villains in fiction with the Joker. She was very distinct among the other female characters, being a more comedic character, but still has a tragedy to her being manipulated by such an evil character, having both heroic and villainous qualities to her at the same time. Since then, Harley's popularity has increased big time, becoming more of an anti-hero who has a moral compass. But
a big charity bash a few years back, the one the Joker robbed, I was the clown girl holding the gun on ya!
It is also still pretty insane, but she's a very enjoyable character due to how strong her personality comes across. So fans were wondering when Harley was going to become a movie character. With this new DC universe being a thing, it seemed like now was the perfect time to do that. I was always interested in the portrayal of Harley, so this was a huge draw for me with this movie. Also helps that she was very well casted. First live action portrayal by newcomer actress Margot Robbie, otherwise known as that gorgeous girl in The Wolf of Wall Street. And I think most people fell in love with her after that film. In more ways than one, if you know what I'm saying, if you've seen the movie. But taking her looks aside, she definitely fits the mold really well. I mean, blonde girl that can be very expressive and also nails a Brooklyn accent. Yeah, she was a good fit for Harley Quinn. It seemed so promising. What could go wrong? What went wrong was that Suicide Squad was a terrible movie. Harley Quinn was unfortunately not done with justice here. But to defend Margot Robbie, she was not at fault with the portrayal of this character. If there is one thing decent about this movie with Harley Quinn, is that you do see a bit of that personality we like from the character through Robbie's performance.
Harley Quinn, nice to meet ya.
love your perfume. What is that? The stench of death?
Harley Quinn has been lately stated as DC's Deadpool because it's an over-the-top personality mixed with violence and meta humor. But that's not always the case with her. Sure, some projects will be like that, but Harley is also a tragic character in her own right, having issues of trusting too easily. And throughout the years, we've seen that character expand further as not just being a girl with a lot of life, but one who has a lot of potential that was ruined through a toxic relationship. Now doing her own thing, we see Harley becoming more independent and being a good example of how to escape toxicity and be your true self. In this film, the best moments are when she's talking with some of the other Suicide Squad members and getting to know them. We see she has a genuine interest for the distinct and really is analytic with how they behave, like any good therapist would. Margot Robbie portrays that very well when the film actually does try to somewhat be a good Harley Quinn movie. But that's only like 5% of this 2-hour movie, as the film undermines a lot of Harley Quinn as a character. It makes her out to be more so a fangirl of the Joker with Stockholm Syndrome, which, okay, she is kind of that in the original animated series, and the other portrayals of Harley Quinn. We see a progression in development of how Harley questions her decisions of being with the Joker. The movie could have done that, and even tries to at points, but it's overshadowed by this being more fixated on just introducing these characters and having this distorted editing that just doesn't work. Also doesn't help that this movie admittedly tries to sexualize her too much when, look, I get it, Margot Robbie is sexy, but gratuitous fan service is gratuitous fan service. And also some really, really bad dialogue too.
Now that's killer app.
That's awful. It pains me that this character ended up being part of such a disappointment behind this movie. However, the good news is, this wasn't the end of Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. She was one of the better received parts of this movie, to a point where she was given another chance as the character. We don't have to think about the 5-minute decent scene with Harley Quinn in this movie, cause now we have a Suicide Squad movie that actually did her justice. Thank the movie gods that Margot Robbie not only got a much more successful career, but also a better Harley Quinn movie, thanks to James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. Along with Birds of Prey 2, fuck you, that movie kicks ass. After Harley's introduction in Suicide Squad, we then cut to the introductions to the rest of the cast of this movie. Oh yeah, this is supposed to be an ensemble cast, so we're gonna get to know a lot of them here, right? Well, they're not a DC icon like Quinn or a big celeb like Will Smith, so of course they're just gonna quickly introduce them, and that's it. No real special scene that integrates them into an interesting story where we get to know them. Amanda Waller be like, hey, I know these villains and they're working for us. The villains are Captain Boomerang, an Australian dude who throws boomerangs, I guess. He's a rival of the Flash, and I don't know too much about him. This character does seem kind of ridiculous. He could work, and to the credit of Jai Courtney, he does play it up at points. But again, barely know anything about him in this movie, and not a whole lot of scenes where we get to know him. Instead, we get a literal 2-second cameo from a criminal.
No honor among thieves, eh?
We also get this other dude named El Diablo, who has these fire powers and ends up destroying his own home. And that's about it in terms of what we know about that dude. Not a whole lot of personality here. And we also get Killer Croc. Oh yeah, Batman villain everyone loves. Well,
when Batman came nosing around, he was getting closer, closer. I threw a rock at him.
Kinda.
It was a big rock.
Maybe not the most popular, but he is kinda entertaining as a brute character when done right. Obviously, with a Guardians of the Galaxy influence, we need some sort of Groot-like muscle of the group. So why not Killer Croc? Again, not really well expanded upon, outside of him saying jokes.
Not me, shorty. I'm beautiful.
Not really funny jokes, however. All of this is used to bring in our crew, all with this music video style of editing that feels overkill. One thing that should have helped this film, but ends up not, is the film's use of licensed music. Of course, with Guardians of the Galaxy really popularizing licensed music, Suicide Squad was going to have a huge emphasis on music, even having more tracks than Guardians of the Galaxy that are made for this movie, including a music video of Rick Ross and Skrillex.
You wanna know my gang, Suicide Squad?
Yeah, this movie, much like its editing style, is overkill, in the worst way, as this movie has too many moments where they just have a licensed song play. Where other movies, specifically Guardians of the Galaxy, does it, there's at least more of a purpose, story-wise, that gives the scene more meaning, because James Gunn was thoughtful with his approach to licensed music. Here, it just feels like they set up a playlist of random songs and just decided to go with it because they think it'll make the movie good. The songs picked here are good songs. No one wants songs like the Rolling Stones' Sympathy for the Devil and Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody to be in a movie this shitty. It's tragic that this movie has to have these songs still be associated, because damn it, this soundtrack just feels like pandering with its execution. It's a mess of a movie that does eventually try to attempt a story, as we then get Amanda Waller talking about the situation these characters have to face off against. They're being led by Rick Flag, played by Joel Kinnaman. He's admittedly okay in this, and I'm glad he did return in the Suicide Squad, but the character is still written pretty poorly, as he's motivated by his girlfriend who got affected by some witchcraft, as the main threat of this movie is this character called the Enchantress, a powerful witch-like character who has the help of her brother that was also not in the marketing, as it's some reject from Gods of Egypt, a movie that came out the same fucking year Suicide Squad came out. Happy 10-year anniversary, by the way. Though I guess to give credit where credit is due, the Enchantress makeup isn't all bad. I think her and Killer Croc's makeup are the reason why this movie did get an Oscar for makeup. Yeah, very odd a movie this bad won an Oscar, but at least it was for an element that was somewhat justifiable, and nothing else like the special effects, which, oh Jesus, this looks bad. Of course, as you expect, Enchantress doesn't really make much of an impression outside of generic bad guy. Typical good versus evil shit, where we don't get villains fleshed out. Instead, we get more montages and characters spewing out atrocious one-liners.
Okay? Triangle, bitch.
The constant editing, random scenes that go nowhere, and licensed song still doesn't stop from there, as we get thrown into these characters already starting to set up going into their mission. Not really a lot of depth to it, no real character dynamic to give us a hint of how these characters play off one another, no. Instead, we get pointless jokes and more characters, as we get this guy.
Come Slipknot, the man who can climb anything. Wonderful.
Yeah, everyone's favorite DC character, the man who can climb anything. You know, that reminds me, this movie is supposed to have more stakes, as Suicide Squad has the name for a reason, as any one of these team members can go boom at any point in the... Of course you know this guy is going to be the first one to die. They make it so fucking obvious. Not only just randomly introduced as some obscure DC character we don't have any attachment to, so we don't feel anything when he's axed. Maybe some laughter. But that's only because of how comedically pathetic this all is. They even gave this dude a quick little character trailer, and it was still obvious he was gonna die because he had no lines. Damn, Adam Beach, you deserve better than this. Oh, and of course, they leave. Not without one more character introduction. This is Katana. She has my back. I would advise not to get killed by her. Her sword traps the souls of its victims. Yeah, an introduction so forcefully rushed and out of nowhere that it's essentially became meme-defied. I want to like this character because she does look kind of cool, but we are given nothing, just vague stuff about her character, and just feels wasted yet again. But hey, it shouldn't be all bad. I mean, she has a sword, and this movie is about to get action-packed to the max, right? Well, I guess, but it's nothing too special. Partially because this movie is so dimly lit, and it's mostly just a generic shootout with these characters taking down faceless drones. Enchantress and her brother summon these random enemies that just feel expendable, and where the soft reboot gave some weight to the threat being a bunch of fascists, these are just generic zombie-like creatures. For a movie about supervillains, maybe something more refreshing than just these faceless drones? Of course not. We gotta have even more action, as we get a scene that was apparently part of the reshoots. So, more pointless filler. How do you make a movie with Harley Quinn having her own action scene and make it feel like nothing? Well, the good news is, they reach an interesting point of their destination, as Harley Quinn leaves her separate ways to join forces with another character for a bit. A character that she has feelings for. And more importantly, a character that I have negated to mention in this entire review. Oh yeah, don't think I forgot about this contribution to the film, but I specifically left this person out for a reason. Not because in actuality he has no impact to the story when you really think about it. Oh no, this is an element so infamous and so much wrong about it that has only gotten worse the more time has gone by. An element so bad that it deserves its own segment to trash it. As it's now time to talk about Jared Leto's Joker. Now, I will confess something. When it was announced that Jared Leto was going to be the Joker, I was actually kinda hyped. Partially because, for one, I was one of those Joker fans who loved the character. Let's face it, if you saw The Dark Knight around the same time I did, y'all know why. Cause this character has been incredibly popular through more ways than one. This character was always seen as one of the most popular villains of all time, and to a fault that did give this character some backlash. Mostly because of, well, some of the crazy fans who idolize this villain too much. Don't get me wrong, the Joker is a great antagonist, but this man ain't no role model due to, well...
You always take shots from folks who just don't get the joke.
Abusive boyfriend material. Besides, I learned to appreciate Harley Quinn more anyway. But that doesn't mean I can't see why this character was a great character to watch, because this is one of those evil characters that embellishes in his villainous ways so much that you can't help but find him a little fascinating to watch. He can be funny, tragic, and horrifying at the same time. And what helps is so many different portrayals of the character by so many different actors, whether it be Mark Hamill, Heath Ledger, Jack Nicholson, or Joaquin Phoenix. It was always exciting to see who would be the next actor to play the clown Prince of Darkness. For this film, enter in this actor known as Jared Leto, who I have to admit, I used to be a fan of. The key word being used to. I saw this movie called Requiem for a Dream a long time ago and was actually really impressed with such a visceral performance he had in a movie that, while as intense as it is, was also one fantastic, mesmerizing movie. Little did I know, the only thing worse than the emotional trauma that movie gave me was convincing me that Leto had to be in more movies for a while. But to be fair, it wasn't always like this, as Leto was kind of respected for a bit, with him having a lot of people backed him, and for good merit. To his credit, he was pretty good in a lot of movies, and some of those movies are fantastic regardless. Even on his own, it seemed like he was a pretty dedicated actor taking on so many different roles, and trying to do a lot of method acting to enhance those roles. It seemed to have worked out, as he was fairly popular. He had his own band, and even won an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor just as he was casted as the Joker. This seems like a good track record. So, what the hell happened? Well, I'm not sure if it was the Oscar that went to his head, but it was around this time Jared Leto started to become less respectable. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it was nearly coming. because this guy ended up being a creep. But it was him being cast as the Joker that was the beginning of the end for Leto. The skepticism of him being the Joker all started with this first image. Oh, that's what the Joker looks like? Okay, maybe it's me, but I was hoping for a cool, badass comic book sinister version of the Joker, not someone who looks like a gangster version of a war boy from Mad Max. Now, I still gave it the benefit of the doubt, because this is just an image. People were very upset at Heath Ledger's first image of the Joker looking like a pretty boy, but
Starting tonight, I'm a man of my word.
that turned out amazing. We would have to see more footage of his Joker's portrayal. Maybe he'll have an awesome laugh and will be so sadistic that he becomes scary. Okay, that laugh has some getting used to. But hey, it's still not out yet. I want to give this movie the benefit of the doubt because I've seen Leto be a good actor, and I'm psyched for this movie. So I want him to impress everyone the same way Heath Ledger did posthumously back in 2008. So did Leto Of course he didn't. What do you think? Yet, here's the odd thing about Leto as the Joker in this movie. It's still kind of hard to judge his performance somewhat, because he's not in this movie as much as you would think. Part of the reason I hold off on talking about him is because when you look at the actual movie, outside of just being there for Harley Quinn occasionally, Joker doesn't really have any impact to the plot. Even when it comes to his interaction with Harley, it's still pretty limited, with a few key sequences showcasing Harley's origin, and the Joker having some sort of faithfulness to her. But you can still take him out of the movie, and it wouldn't affect much. It feels odd because wouldn't the likely choice be to have Joker be the main threat the Suicide Squad has to go up against? I mean, maybe they wanted to have an excuse to bring attention to a lesser known villain. Or maybe they wanted to have an antagonist that's more super powerful and typical of a comic book blockbuster movie, which was the wrong choice, as maybe a more grounded villain would have been more interesting to tackle as opposed to a big worldwide threat, at least if they wanted to differentiate themselves from Marvel. So why not the Joker? Well, here's the other crazy thing. There was apparently more of the Joker than we initially thought, as due to this film's strange post-production, we were aware that Joker was not only said to be a bigger part of the movie prior to its release, but they had a lot more footage shot with him. Hell, some of that footage was even seen in the trailers. It's been like a decade, and we still never saw what happened in this shot with the grenade. Surely there has to be a full-fledged director's cut of the movie in the vein of the Snyder Cut that David Ayer has, so he can be able to showcase this unseen footage, right? Well, sort of. There's an extended edition, but it only added one scene with Leto as the Joker. Nothing too special, and the film still sucks. It's not a completely different movie. That's the real vision of what Ayer wanted to make, but just the movie itself with a few extra scenes. But it doesn't make it that much better. Usually this is the part where I encourage and hope that David Ayer could get the original movie he wanted to make into reality. However, this time, after a decade, I don't think I'm feeling it anymore. It's not even out of the fact that Snyder fans went too far with the Snyder Cut being released, and I want to move on to the next big thing for DC. I mean, it is part of it, though more so than that, I'm not sure if this movie would have been worth seeing, because maybe it would be a better film, but it wouldn't change the stuff that seems unsalvageable. One of those things being Leto as the Joker, because, yeah, I gotta be real. After being in denial on this Joker not being that bad, it's time to come clean and say, this Joker sucks. Even taking the design and laugh out of it, this version of the character just seems annoyingly manic. Leto acts more like an obnoxious cosplayer of the Joker, where he would just smug and tries to be threatening, but comes across as overacting. Nicholson, Ledger, and Phoenix had their sense of craziness to them, but they were still very well written and interesting portrayals that tend to tone back things when needed, to add to the unpredictability of this character. You get a sense that Joker when done right as a comic book superhero villain, earns his status of boss by still maintaining a sense of class in spite of the deranged lunacy he has. Leto feels more like a lackey to a bigger villain, and that's not really the Joker. Really doesn't help that his dialogue is awful.
To this handsome hunka.
And oftentimes he channels either Jim Carrey.
I execute my will according to my plan, and you, Doctor.
It's party time. P-A-R-T. Why? Because I gotta.
Or Richard Nixon at parts.
Okay, honey. It's me and you. Who's kicking who around now?
I think we probably spared a lot more of the Joker, cause the only other time he showed up was at the end of the Snyder Cut. And quite frankly, he's not that much better there. Leto's Joker was something that could have been good, and made for a neat version of the character for this new DC universe. But instead, we get something even worse than George Clooney playing Batman in terms of wasted performance.
This is why Superman works alone.
Also to note, Suicide Squad not only uncovered Leto being not as good as an actor, but also more of a prick than we thought. Leto was known for method acting, where he really tries to get into character for his movies by trying to be a part of their lifestyle off camera. Really dedicating himself to changing his entire appearance and personality to create for a great performance. There have been times where they had pulled that off well for Leto, but unlike a much better actor than him, Christian Bale, Leto took the method acting too far. He acted like his obnoxious version of the Joker by sending his co-stars use condoms and dead rats and shit that's like, man, I get pulling a joke, but this is just absurd, and it doesn't make the performance better at all.
To work on Jared Leto stayed in character like the whole time, which was so fun. Not fun. It was kind of uncomfortable.
And since then, his method acting techniques have only gotten more insufferable to the point where I really can't find that much to admire about him nowadays. Especially since, did I mention he's also a predator too? All this stuff makes him kind of awful, and his post-Suicide Squad career has not recovered since. Sure, he was in better movies that have came out after Suicide Squad, but even then, he was oftentimes considered the weakest part of the movie, and nowadays literally considered a turnoff. He was the reason why Tron Ares flopped, as barely anyone wants to associate with this guy anymore, because he's now one of the biggest actors that people publicly roast and mock nowadays.
Nobody ever wants honeydew, but it's always there.
It is literally the worst part of everything it's in. It's like the Jared Leto of fruits.
Thank you. Exactly.
Jared Leto has now joined the ranks of the famed actors like Chevy Chase and Mel Gibson, where no matter how many good movies you were in at your high point, your asshole behavior and mistreatment of others will turn you into that guy everyone is like, oh yeah, he's a gigantic asshole. Love the movie, but he sucks. It's the fate that Leto deserves, honestly. Which, there's a tragedy to this. At one point, I had a feeling Leto was going to be remembered as a beloved actor who has true talent for a brief period, when I saw him first acting in movies. Now he's Morbius. I don't even need to say anything else, because nothing can spell out total failure than being the star of the main movie of the 2020s that everyone dunks on for being fucking Morbius. It is that reason why this is the one time everyone is okay with Batman killing the Joker.
Hey, Paul!
Because he really is the worst one.
Get what you fucking deserve!
Anyway, enough about Leto and his Joker, as we don't see him again in the film when Harley ends up getting back with the squad regardless. We then cut to another almost okay scene where Harley, Deadshot, and the rest of the gang are chatting at a bar. On paper, seems kinda nice, since it's a little downtime before the big finale. And you know, the performances are okay to where it almost feels like these characters matter. Especially when we get more background on El Diablo, which does add to some dramatic tension. The problem is it feels too little too late, and also feels completely unearned once we witness what might be one of the worst third acts in blockbuster history. Oh man, this shit sucks. Suicide Squad's third act is so bad because it is exactly what you expect it to be. It's just a big, bombastic finale CGI fight with the main bad guy. But this one in particular feels specifically insulting. This couldn't be a way for a movie like this to end. Maybe a more interesting showcase of these characters confronting their past demons? Or maybe action that's very unique and really well done. After all, James Gunn ended his Suicide Squad battle with a giant starfish, so maybe a big finale battle isn't all that bad. The difference there was that there were actual stakes to these characters, because we liked them in this film, because we got to know them. In this, they're just vessels to pour out the final battle. Also, giant generic Gods of Egypt monster, not nearly as cool as a giant starfish. It looks so bad from the effects standpoint, with the biggest cliche too of the damn sky beams that studios love to put out after Transformers 3.
We're going to the swirling ring of trash in the sky.
Whatever story or character depth they try to add here, it's so sloppily put together and so poorly basic surface level character writing that it comes across as pathetic. Like, look how choppy the editing is here. Also, El Diablo turns into a demon, cause why not? You see Jared Leto without Joker makeup for a brief moment, and Harley says some stupid Saturday morning cartoon dialogue.
Just one teeny problem. You mess with my friends.
All in a film that's so lame and feels lacking in terms of what a Suicide Squad movie could have. It could have been a unique style of superhero movie that had interesting character dynamics and went really hard with these characters being villains despite being hired to be the heroes. It could have used its budget wisely by giving us action set pieces that are creative and hardcore in the best of ways. Instead, we got a sanitized PG-13 movie that wouldn't even pass as a cool edgelord movie in 2006, much less 2016. I'm sorry, but this movie just disappointed me that much. And I can't deny the fact that I was excited for it. But I've come to terms with the fact that the product they gave us was shit. Amanda Waller comes back, gives Deadshot some time to see his daughter, and gives some benefits to the other squad members.
Any other requests?
Ooh, an espresso machine.
BET.
I guess this movie's attempt at humor sort of way. Seems like all is alright in the world. Until... Ew, Jared Leto is back, setting up for potential other movies where Harley Quinn and Joker team up. Maybe would have been excited for it if our Harley and Joker were put to good use here. Oh, and there's also a small post-credit scene setting up Justice League with Ben Affleck. Okay, whatever. Movie is at least over now. I know some expected Suicide Squad to be a bad movie from the start, but let it be known, this movie could have been good. This could have really made DC the good competing comic book movie franchise that fans wanted for these characters to have after seeing Marvel do it so well. The problem was, it was rushed, it had so many poor story and character choices, it just feels like a movie that's more concerned about being the next big popular thing than an actual good movie. Copying from so many better movies into one that is nearly unwatchable at points for me. 10 years since this movie came out, and time has not been kinder to it. Doesn't help that we got a real Suicide Squad movie 5 years later, and Jared Leto ruined his career more so in Morbius, and being the worst. A Leto movie that's more tragic than Requiem for a Dream, because this and Darren Aronofsky's slop fest made me question if the talent from people like Leto and Darren Aronofsky was just a fluke from Requiem for a Dream. A cruel joke done by the world's worst Joker in a movie that may as well be the most disappointing movie I have ever seen in my life. Maybe not the most disappointing thing that happened in 2016, but certainly didn't help make that year better as someone who wanted Harley Quinn's first movie to be good. So yeah, safe to say that it wasn't a fun time being a DC fan, knowing that quite a few films did not live up to my expectations in the year 2016. That also goes for the Killing Joke movie too, by the way. But was hope lost for the DC universe for me? Honestly, no.
I repeat, what?
I know it sounds weird because a movie as bad as Suicide Squad would make me want to have nothing to do with the DC universe. Yet we all know that things can be very unpredictable, and something I always try to think about after massive disappointments is times where good things did occur shortly after those disappointments happened. It has happened before. Who said it couldn't happen again? DC still had plenty of movies well into production at this point, so maybe if not Suicide Squad to bring fate to the DC cinematic universe, why not another movie? Turns out, things did look up, as just a little under a year after Suicide Squad, we got a hero that was long overdue for a movie. Yeah, Wonder Woman finally got her solo debut, and some might crap on this movie and felt like it was overhyped, and while maybe not everything about it has aged well, it did suffer from typical superhero movie syndrome, and maybe we weren't as wise picking Gal Gadot to be the face of the iconic superheroine. But honestly, Wonder Woman was a really good start at bringing this character to the big screen. It was a solid introduction to Diana Prince as a character, and satisfied the audience at a time that maybe people felt like there could be good things to come out of this DC universe. With a rocky start, we can get a movie that does the character faithfully, adapting them into the silver screen in a very well done way. I could have been the only one who genuinely got hyped for Wonder Woman's call to action in her own movie. I remember many people did. It's the kind of thing that made me regain some faith in this franchise I love. Then we all went back to square one with the release of Justice League later that year. Yeah, another Phantom Menace scene done with this film in the same way of Suicide Squad. But unlike Suicide Squad, where it did make money, Justice League was kind of a flop. It cost a lot to make, and while it did make over $600 million, the fact that the biggest superhero competitor to Marvel wasn't even as financially profitable as Guardians of the Galaxy, this was the biggest sign that DC was still struggling.
Yeah. Oh, something is definitely bleeding.
Yeah, I wish I could say things got 100% better after Wonder Woman, but there was still a lot of crap from the DC universe after the release of Batman vs. Superman and Suicide Squad. Yet at the same time, the quality was so inconsistent that for a while, I felt interested to see whether or not there was a project that DC can learn the right answers from in the best ways and the worst ways. Sometimes it was even a middle ground too, as a year after Justice League, we got Aquaman, which, it was alright. Okay, it's not too special, but it's one of those movies that's so ridiculous, it becomes entertaining, at least. Crazy to think that this managed to be the highest grossing movie of the DCEU. Goddamn, an Aquaman movie making $1 billion? Who would have thought? But also good news, as after Aquaman, we got Shazam.
I'd like to purchase some of your finest beer, please.
Again, much like Wonder Woman, not as great as it was on its first viewing, but it was another DC project that was still a lot of fun. It had a lighthearted tone from a guy who has a good sense of personality in his films, and was easily the correct way to do a DC film with a more comedic tone. Where Justice League felt forced and tried way too hard to be Marvel, this feels like Marvel when they are at their best. And that's not a bad thing.
Thank you so much for keeping them safe, Detective Moron.
It's Moran.
It was another huge step in the right direction for DC, and they were hoping that Zachary Levi would be their next big flagship hero. Well, it didn't quite become the case, but it made me even more glad to see DC trying new things. Where the MCU got a little repetitive after a while, for me, even with some of their awesome movies, DC at least kept it interesting. New ways of handling their films, even the ones outside the DCEU. With a Teen Titans movie that was surprisingly not too bad, and a Joker movie that actually got an Oscar nomination for Best Picture. Oh, and I mentioned we also got Lego Batman as well.
I'm Batman, I'm awesome, I got a 9-pack.
So things were looking up. And while many can still have their own opinions about DC and their movies, I think the variety of films made them interesting to talk about and see how they pan out. But what to do with a character that needed a comeback? Well, in my honest opinion, despite this being another mixed film from the DCEU, it might just be what I consider to be a potential best from the cinematic universe.
I'm so taken over clowns.
Now, Birds of Prey wasn't their biggest hit by any means, and it's not a perfect movie, but damn it, this movie had the sauce. The kind of sauce that was solely missing from Suicide Squad. They kicked out Jared Leto's Joker and decided to make a solo adventure with Harley Quinn, in a full redemption arc of Margot Robbie as the iconic clown villainess. This was the apology I needed to rectify a proper movie with Harley Quinn. While it does the Deadpool style to a good extent, there's something about it that's a bit more raw and unhinged. Some may not like that, but I think it adds to this unique take on this property, being more filmmaker-centric. It even got an R rating, unlike Suicide Squad, and showcased more of Harley's bombastic personality, with it feeling more like a film this time, instead of an overly edited music video. It's colorful, strange, and kind of a blast of an action film. I might be biased, since a movie that has Ramona Flowers teaming up with Harley Quinn is an easy way to win me over, but damn it, do I think this is an underrated movie. If anything else, the movie was still the biggest success for superhero movies in 2020, as it certainly was in Wonder Woman 1984.
I need to find a way to touch a lot of people at the same time.
It was a movie, and a downgrade from the first, but this rocky road, as we stated, might have some downgrades. It also got some upgrades, not just with Harley Quinn, but even, strangely enough, the Justice League.
No.
Okay, in a weird can of worms sort of deal, where I have to talk about the Snyder Cut, I do want to introduce this movie by saying this. This film is what I consider to be the proper ending to the DCEU. A strange film that, for all of its faults, has more of the things I wanted to witness in a DC film to compete against Marvel. For as strange as Snyder's universe is, it was also another big risk, as we were going back to a film, and this time making it more the film the guy who directed it wanted to make. After such a troublesome production, I felt this was honestly a good way to get closure for the DCEU as we know it. Now again, like some of the other films, hasn't always aged as well in hindsight. I mostly blame that to Snyder trying to make a bunch of fake post-credit scenes to get hype for potential ideas that will never exist now. I know some people want this to continue still, but guys, this is one of those things where you just gotta let it go. The Snyder Cut was the last hurrah for this universe, as it gave us a Justice League movie we hoped for, with what we had seen prior that gave us that hope DC fans got from the good of this weird cinematic universe. A lot will still emphasize the crap with the movies, and with movies as bad as Suicide Squad, I can't deny that, and say this universe is 100% good. But it was certainly an interesting ride, and at the very least, the Snyder Cut was decent closure to their versions of Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and among others, with some satisfying moments and more true to the comic look and feel we like seeing these characters be a part of. Snyder at least had a bit of passion for DC, and while I don't think he quite understands it as much as fans claims he does, for a while I did like to see his work because he clearly has a love for it. As overly long and too ambitious his movies are, I'm glad he tried to make a consistent universe with some success, even in the mix of massive failures. Sure, we may never see this universe exactly like this way again, and even Snyder's solo career went down even further, but at least we got closure. closure that the DC universe can still have a good movie and enough interesting projects to where they can be talked about as much as something like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. However, don't think this is over yet. As with closure, there tends to be a passing of the torch, as endings can create new beginnings. As that very same year the Snyder Cut came out, we got the best redemption to a horrible movie ever. If David Ayer couldn't give me the Suicide Squad movie that deserved to exist in 2016, James Gunn did that in 2021. While unfortunately not as big of a box office hit as the first, it didn't matter actually. This was a comic movie that was so beloved in comparison to the first film that this really was a proper soft reboot.
He does exactly what I do, but better.
It took the same concept and this time actually put it to its full potential, with a film that feels more personal and bigger than the first Suicide Squad movie ever could have been. It had no Jared Leto as the Joker. It went all the way with its comic book style and violence. It had a better written script with a great cast, a CGI talking shark, and most importantly, it fully redeemed Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn for the full public. She kind of had the same journey as Hugh Jackman's Wolverine trilogy. The first one sucked ass, the second one liked just fine, but third time, that is gold. This was the movie to really soft reboot the DC universe into something better. As now, James Gunn is fully in charge of DC, and he's been on a roll with not only giving us a Peacemaker show that's awesome, but even managed to do a better job with Superman than Zack Snyder in my opinion. He gave us the DC universe we need, but I don't look back as horribly of the Snyderverse as much as other people do. Sure, there were some bad movies, like I mentioned, but there were a lot of good things too, whether the movies itself or something within the movies that made me at least hope for something better to come along. Hope is what we tend to need, and I think seeing the universe unfold the way it did, while frustrating, definitely was interesting to see, and had enough for me to go back to. What really made this crazy journey worth it was seeing this now be our end product with what DC movies have become now. The Snyder Cut ended the universe, the Suicide Squad passed the torch to ultimately have Superman being led by James Gunn. It's safe to say that DC is in a much better place with not just James Gunn's films, but Matt Reeves having a separate Batman universe that felt so new when taking on the Batman. It's at this point I felt us longtime fans have been eating good. Also, I know some of you are going to bring up the fact that there were technically more movies in the DCEU after Suicide Squad and the Snyder Cut that came out before Superman 2025, but do I really need to talk about them here? I mean, we had Black Adam, which, it's a movie, and you had Shazam 2, which, okay, really wasn't all that bad. The problem was it flopped so fucking hard at the box office that it made Flynn Rider go insane.
Shazam 2, any good? We didn't see it.
I thought it was pretty good.
And then you had The Flash, and oh god, kill it, fucking kill it, get it out, kill it, no. Blue Beetle was pretty alright. And oh yeah, there was an Aquaman sequel that everyone forgot about. Oh, then there was that Joker movie that got Razzies for being a musical.
I don't want to sing anymore.
Yeah, it could still be a rocky history for DC. But the moral of the story is, even when things can feel uncertain, things can and will improve if the right people come in. Not just towards the DC universe, but towards a better tomorrow in general. Even if sometimes they might feel super rare, you'll still see people who will help you out. And hell, even during those times, you will still see good things in the mix. As strange as this universe has been, it's because of the shift from Suicide Squad to the Suicide Squad is what makes me optimistic that things can change for the better. Even if the next DC movie is more in quality to Justice League than The Dark Knight, we can still get another Superman 2025. Things can't be perfect, but if there's one thing that is consistent with the Suicide Squad is that they still end up becoming better, despite being set up as the villains of this world. So take that for what it's worth. I will admit, there's one last positive thing I could end on with this movie review. I know I shat a lot on Suicide Squad 2016, very hard. And for as much as it deserves its bashing, I can at least give it some credit on one thing and one thing only. It's still a better Will Smith movie than the Aladdin remake.
Never seen that one before.
Thank you and good night.
Why don't we use these guys?
What am I gonna do? Get a bunch of criminals together to fight the criminals? That's a stupid idea.
Just a tribute of the 75 years the Joker's been in the comics.
Just a tribute. I want